Hello and welcome to Wake and Jake. Happy Monday, April 17th. As we're in a little sports eclipse. Gotta stop using that word. But it's fun. Any sport you put on right now, if you're a baseball diehard, you're obviously into the season watching your team every night. And hopefully some of the Sunday night baseballs are mixing in something else if you're a big baseball fan. But it's tough because it's also playoff hockey time. Got my first dose of that this weekend between our Rangers. Bandwagon Blue Shirts is back. Some of you understand. Some of you may never. Good episode last night.
Good ep. I rewatched.
And this is for spits and giggles a little bit. We are with DraftKings. We talk some sports betting a little bit. And I don't know, bet responsibly. There was a few, after the Ipe scandal, which is that over or is it just getting started?
I don't know.
Is it done?
Got a conversation with my dad for a while this weekend. He was like, so Tani's just like never going to be asked about this again, right? I was like, seems that way. I think it's over. Ipe's a bad guy.
Ohtani just hitting absolute bombs, became the Japanese baseball player with the most home runs, passing Matsui as they rolled the Mets yesterday. That's crazy to think. Matsui was like a really good power hitter for a period of time. Ohtani's supposed to be hitting his prime. Mets actually win that series and are kind of hot. Dodgers spinning a little bit. And I do want the main baseball topic today is I keep doing this, what do we know, what do we don't know? I wanted to do fake out or breakout later this week with Foolish and Jolly and make them pick a side. It might be, I still think it's too early. And I said it's April 17th, it's April 22nd. That's on me. I got
crossed.
But it's still too early. Like you're looking at, I thought it was closer to a month of games, but the Korea series threw that off. We're a week away from a month of games, and then you can truly look at it and say, "Wow, this player had a massive month." If a player has a big week this week, they've had a good first month. So I think I want to wait a little bit for that. I want to dive into a little bit of who is this year's St. Louis Cardinals. So kind of not a fun topic, and there's one team that clearly stands out, but I want to dive into the past couple years of standings and where we currently stand to go from there. I derailed myself from my DraftKings betting speech. One of my buddies, who will remain nameless, it's not nameless, Jeff, that's Trevor's buddy. One of my buddies who will remain nameless, but he's a very funny person. He texted at... What time did the Thunder game start last night?
It was
9
like
or
10-ish.
8, 10?
I think by the time it got going.
9:30 or 10? 10.
They've been all what? And it's smart to do it this way, but they've all been waiting for when the next one ends, and they all keep getting pushed. So it might have been supposed to be a 9:30, ended up at 10. I don't know.
Well,
either way.
Oh, well, I can tell you. Right around 9:30, one of my buddies texted me, and he said, Thunder Canucks to win parlay. Buy your wife's boyfriend something nice. And that text made me laugh. So I did place a bet on that. And I found myself from 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. peeled on the Thunder and the Vancouver Canucks. And it was actually, the bet won, which made it a better time. But for those of you that maybe don't know the sports gambling thing or don't get it, yeah, we don't want people to overextend themselves, but you put a little cheese on that. The Predators-Canucks game was a lot of fun. Playoff hockey is here, and watching the young Thunder deal with their first kind of taste of the playoffs. And it's one of those dumb sports things that you find yourself saying, and I'm going to find myself saying over years, but everyone's looked at the Thunder as the 1 seed in the West, and no one has the Thunder as the 1 seed. Obviously, the Nuggets, just because they are so Joker's awesome, and they're probably going to run it back, and I don't know. They have a legit shot to repeat, which is the year of repeats. But there's just something about being a young team that nobody believes in you until you do it. So I don't know if you want to transfer that to baseball, and some of these teams hoping to win this year. That being said, the Snakes made the World Series last year. Texas came out of nowhere. So that's where baseball can be a little different. I do think it's one of the more fun things I do think basketball has, is that teams really have to get their lumps before they can go to the next level. So we might end with more sports equinox stuff just because it was a fun weekend and it's going to be a fun couple weeks. But diving in to the baseball, and I'll start out wide and I'll start to zoom in. Again, we're a little under a month into the season, and some things are starting to sort out. Some that make sense, some that don't fully make sense yet. Our Yankees have the second best record in the AL East. They're coming off of last season, which was very non-Yankee-ish. Everyone wondered, would the Juan Soto move be enough? Stroman, Verdugo, but Juan Soto, what did that really look like? Two generational players back-to-back, him and Judge. It's funny, the most recent comparison of that was Ohtani and Trout, which didn't work. Obviously a different franchise. But I don't know. I think no one who came in bullish on the Yankees this year?
Everybody, even if you did, it was like we just got burned too bad last year to be like bullish. Like everybody was like there's like a chance it all goes bad because the Yankees have had a lot of things go bad that they thought would go good the last.
I guess Yankee fans got genuinely excited because of the stars and just putting last year in our rear view. I guess not a lot of national baseball people were like Yankees, Yankees, Yankees. And then especially when Cole goes down before the season.
Yeah.
But he's starting to throw. The Yankees are 15-7. Juan Soto has it. Not only does he feel like a generational player, but it feels like with Volpe maybe taking a step and his effect, and Verdugo being a just really solid MLB hitter. Like the Yankees, Glaber, Judge, Rizzo haven't really gone. Stanton's had a couple moments, and that's kind of all we asked. So that's fine. But yeah, the Yankees haven't kind of been fully clicking. Their bullpen feels weird. I don't know. They're 15-7. If Garrett Cole is back on a mound at some point, and Judge, no one's actually worried about, but that has to click at some point. Yanks are feeling good. Orioles are doing Orioles things. They're 14-7, and it looks like the same recipe. Like their lineup is going to chew you up. Meanwhile, their pitching just continues to be good, even though, well, Corbin Burns obviously was a big change, but they had their Kyle Bradish news before the season. No Bautista on the back end. They're the Orioles. The rest of the AL East is AL Easting. Everyone is above 500 again, which it's a credit to that division. Right now, the Rays are in last place. Jays, Sox. And again, good for the Red Sox. I think that's for the Jays or the Rays, I don't know what conclusions you could truly draw from these games. Like I said with, what am I calling it? Fake out or shake out? No. Fake out or breakout. A shakeout. It's a music video. The Rays or Jays have a big week this week, and they're on track with some of the best teams this season. If they don't, we'll talk about that in a second. And the Red Sox. Injury bug has now hit them. They're the road Sox. They're winning a ton of games on the road. Good for them. The AL Central. The Cleveland Guardians have the best record in the American League. Okay. We'll dive into that a little more. Royals have gone off to a good start. The Tigers are 12-10. So they're kind of in that middler area of, hey, that's for what they're hoping to do this year. Like the Tigers' first box they had to check was don't have an atrocious start. And the Minnesota Twins kind of have done that. They're 7-13. They are digging a hole. Chicago White Sox, awful. 3-18 if you haven't been keeping up. 3-18. The AL West is a little funky. The Texas Rangers are 12-11. The Mariners 11-11. Make a wish. Angels are in third place at 9-13. then it's Oakland, then it's Houston. Yo. NL quick. Braves are the Braves. Phillies are the Phillies. The Mets are playing an awesome brand of baseball. They're 12-9. Nationals are doing Nationals things. They just took a couple from the Astros. Marlins, massive disappointment, 6-17. In the Central, Brewers are on top with the Cubbies, 13-9, 2 games back. Reds are 12-9. Pirates are back down to 500. They got off to a hot start. They've been coming down to earth again. And the Cardinals are 9-13. So, yeah, I think Cardinals, they need to finish strong. Bad week this week. I'll get there in a second. Dodgers are 13-11. Probably changes soon. We assume. The Padres are 500. They had a lot of Dodger games and some road trips. The Snakes are a game under 500. The Giants are 10-13, and the Rockies are 5-17. Welcome back, Colorado. They are listed more on the Weekly Dumb this week than the Talking Baseball sheet. So, go Rockies, go. Why I did all of that. I wanted to look at the past couple years and see if we could draw any actual conclusions from these starts. And the biggest thing, it's a lot easier for a team to have had a good start and come back than a team to have a bad start and get better. So from last year, I picked a somewhat random date. I put April 28th because that was close to how many games have been played from last year. On April 28th of last year in the American League, Oakland was 5-22. If you remember how their season ended, not great. Kansas City was 6-21. I think you know, or if you don't remember, their season was sneaky horrid. I think we were all shocked when we opened up their team profile and projection. It was like, wait, they were that bad? Chicago White Sox, 7-20 out of the gates last year. Very bad, no good season on their end. Detroit Tigers, 9-15. Seattle Mariners, 11-15. Boston Red Sox, 13-14. Cleveland was 13-13. So, all of those teams I just mentioned in the AL. Again, it's a small sample size, right? None of those teams made the playoffs. Which, okay, maybe you're rolling your eyes a little bit because you're like, Kansas City, Oakland, the White Sox, Detroit, sure. But Seattle got off to an 11-15 start. They came a game short of the playoffs. Cleveland ran out of steam last year. Boston ran out of steam. The Angels, for the whole American League at this date last year, the playoffs had been sorted except our New York Yankees, who were 15-12, and they faded out historically. Otherwise, it was Houston had a winning record, Texas, Minnesota, Baltimore, Tampa, and Toronto. So with expanded playoffs, I think we've had this whole notion of, hey, you put a couple good months of baseball together, be a little above 500, you're going to be in this. The Diamondbacks had 84 wins last year. Last year at this time, the American League East was sorted except the Yankees falling out. That's pretty insane. In the National League, start at the bottom, the Colorado Rockies. Yep, back at it. The St. Louis Cardinals, which remember we were doing the, St. Louis, and when are they going to snap out of this? They're such a good baseball team. It's coming. Arenado, Goldschmidt, you know all these guys. Was it Waino's last year? And I think before the season, I did I love this Cardinals depth. They're a great baseball organization. They were 10-17. The alarms were going off, and we just didn't know how hard to chime them. Is that a phrase? The Nationals were 9-15. Cincinnati was 11-15. San Francisco Giants 11-14. The Padres were 13-14. And then we get to our first break in the action. The Dodgers last year got off to a 14-13 start. They went on to do Dodgers things. But I thought it was of note, the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams from last year, they all missed the dance. So if you are in that club right now, that's kind of a nervous place to be. You know, current teams that are in that club. The Houston Astros, they would be... What have we been saying about the Houston Astros? Like, it's going to happen. They're Houston. It's coming. They will be in the ALCS. They've done that for 7 straight years. They've got more of a resume than anyone who's really had a resume. Kind of in recent baseball history. Like, you know, prime Yankees a little bit in the 90s. But, you know, the Houston Astros, what they have done regular season to get to the dance and then in the playoffs, really tough to match. They are in that bucket currently. They're 7-16. That's a really bad start. Verlander came back this weekend, and I believe they won that game. But then they lost the next 2 to the Nats. They lost a series to the Nats. And I know that, like, it's baseball. The Nats have been kind of pesky Nats, buying all their stock for next year. But Houston, it's really got to go. It's really got to start going for them and the Minnesota Twins. Yeah. The Minnesota Twins were penciled to win the Central this year. Like, pretty strongly. There was a moment before the season where it was like, wait, the Twins are losing Sonny Gray, who was second in the Cy Young. They shed salary. Kenta Maeda, I don't know. He's been a staple there, but he was banged up.
Theoretically, his ceiling is as like a rotation stabilizer for the year, but that's important.
It's important, and I don't know. Maeda's best years with Minnesota, he was like their guy for a little bit before they really went ham on pitching.
He's a guy that can go on a month-long run easily.
He can have a great half of a season. The Minnesota Twins are 7-13. Right next to the Astros. I didn't mention the Marlins because you've already erased them from your season. They're 6-17. They gone. The other teams that are of note here, you know, the San Francisco Giants, they're 10-13. They ended up investing a lot in their team this year that, again, the expectations got raised really late. Like, really late. Soler, Chapman, Snell, on top of Robbie Ray, Jung-Hoo Lee. Like, they ended up paying a ton of money this offseason to, like, go. So mark them down. And then I think so with that, and this is where I want to get multiple years, because it's tough to base them off 1 year, but 2022, I went back and I did this same exercise. National League, Cincinnati, Washington, Arizona, Chicago, Pittsburgh. Your bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams at this point then. They were not in the playoffs. And I think if you do that year over year, and it gets tricky because we just expanded the playoffs a little more, so I didn't really keep going. That year, Atlanta did come out to a 9-11 start. In the American League, your bottom teams were Baltimore, Texas, Detroit, Cleveland, White Sox, Boston, Kansas City. So that year, Cleveland did win the division, but that's still 1 out of the bottom 7 teams at this point in the season. 1 out of 7 in the AL. And then your bottom 5 in the National League. So Houston is currently in that box. Are they the one? I mean, they technically wouldn't have been as qualified as where Atlanta was in the example, where Cleveland was in the example. But Like you could very strongly say, we mentioned about DraftKings, that one of these teams definitely will not be in the playoffs. And I mean, it's pretty, using my empirical data, which I don't even really know what that means, and I don't have a lot of data. Like, it would be pointing to that neither of these teams are going to make the playoffs. Like, you could make a pretty firm actual argument where these teams are in the standings, they won't make the playoffs. 7-16 out of Houston.
That's a real...
That's awful.
Like, that's a hole.
If they weren't Houston, like this, the Houston panic button hasn't been set off across baseball at all, right?
Like everybody's been like a little laughing because those people still don't like them, but everybody's saying like laughing a little and saying like, but they're Houston, so like I'm scared I'm not gonna all the way do that. Like
if we turned on MLB Network this morning, they would say like,
yeah, they're not doing like an Astros disaster segment, but even we talked a little bit of sports gambling. Like yesterday I'm looking again now. Like Houston, it's still not plus money for them to make the playoffs.
So they're still favored to make the playoffs. See, like
it's about even. Because yesterday I saw 7-15, and I was like, I don't know, they're Houston. If you can get plus money on them just sneaking in and wreaking havoc. And then it was still minus. I was like, all right. Do I just got to be scared?
The St. Louis Cardinals last year started off 10-17. 10-17. Houston is 7-16. So if they go 3-1, they'll be caught up to Houston or to St. Louis from last year.
Yeah.
And what was St. Louis's problems? St. Louis, they were still hitting enough. And by the way, Houston is still hitting, which you can put that as a positive thing, or you can make that a negative thing. Like, they've been one of the best offenses in the American League, and they've been losing. So are they going to keep that up? Maybe. Again, they're Houston. If that hitting comes down a little bit, St. Louis's problem last year was pitching. Their starting pitching, it was what we heard all offseason. They need 3 horses. They ran out of innings last year, and they ran out of production last year. Houston, starting pitching has been one of the big issues. Justin Verlander just came back. Hopefully that could be massive for them. Other side of this, I'm not saying this is happening. I'm actually not saying this is happening. I have Justin Verlander on my fantasy team that we're doing in the office this year. So I believe. But what if Justin Verlander is old? Like Adam Wainwright.
One year that'll happen.
Adam Wainwright's last season. Obviously, pitchers at different points of their career, but remember how nasty Waino actually was? Kind of before that last year?
2022, it was like first start was bad. Better knife that out. It was a straight up like awesome year.
And then the next year. And the other thing that St. Louis had last year that you couldn't really quantify, and maybe they do have a stat. Obviously, there's bullpen stats. It just felt like whenever they needed a game, it got blown. Whether it was Gallegos or Helsley or Cabrera or whoever it was, whenever they had that Cardinals game they needed to win the series or to like not get swept, it just felt like the absolute worst moment to give it up. What's been going on with Abreu and Presley?
Yeah.
Hader's numbers are awful.
Presley's numbers are virtually the same.
We got people screamed at us, and partially fairly so, because, I don't know, Hader's like the best.
I'll give them that. Outside of those 3, everybody else in their bullpen, their numbers are objectively good. Don't know what the vibe's been around that, but
so
those 3, the numbers are bad, just straight up.
What Houston does have working for them is that no one in their division has gone yet. The Rangers are 12-11. Mariners are 11-11. Make a wish. Which good for them. Half game out. Like Mariners, I was tough on them, and they're sitting in a fine spot. Houston, 3rd in batting average, 5th in OPS. Starting pitching, 26th in ERA, 29th in WHIP. Bullpen, 28th in ERA, 26th in WHIP. And yeah, what I heard about St. Louis last year that really the wheels started falling off. They were looking around the clubhouse and kind of didn't know what to blame. It's kind of like the saying when you're sick and you'd rather like know what the problem is. It's like, oh, well, our bullpen's been terrible. Let's add a bullpen. Let's call up a guy. If our bullpen turns it around,
use guys in different spots.
We'll be good. We're not getting production from the middle of our lineup. Okay, well, let's shuffle a couple guys around. Maybe move someone else to the top of the lineup to spread it out. St. Louis didn't know what their problem was.
By the end of the year, like the offensive numbers on the aren't. You couldn't point to anybody and be like, that's what the problem was. I mean, got some guys were like lower than usual.
They would counter back right now.
Disasters.
And they would say pitching as a whole. But again, I think series to series, it wasn't necessarily the case. It was when they needed to get that win, they couldn't get it. And I don't know. I think Minnesota has already kind of lost people a little bit. Like the Minnesota Twins are 8 games back of the Cleveland Guardians. Like I know,
like even when we were penciling them in, I don't think we had them 8 games better than anybody.
Right. And in theory, that's fine. You chip away through a season, good week, you start cutting into that. Also not. The Guardians are playing kind of a fun brand of baseball. Naylor looks really good. Jimenez has come up with a lot of clutch hits for them. They're pitching. That's what Cleveland does. They just kind of ran out last year, while also not getting a lot of offensive production throughout the lineup. The Royals look better and the Tigers look better. So for the Twins to climb, you currently have to jump 3 teams. Everyone kind of looks at the Twins roster now where coming off of last season, it was like, well, they're the most talented team. Looking at that Twins lineup. And that's where, going back to where I kind of started with this, the bottom to the top stuff, not a lot of teams have done that. Like I mentioned a Guardians team that won a weak AL Central.
When we were talking about that one, it's like going into that year, it was going to be like whoever finishes above 500 wins that division, and that's what Cleveland did.
They won it. Again, the date I had on here, April 28th, 2022, they were 7-12. Let's see. When do they get hot?
They had that like August resurgence and caught the Twins at the very end.
Not to be dumb, they won their next 3 games, which brought them to 10-12, which is a lot more.
By 1 month of games, because that season also started late, they were probably right at 500.
They got to 15-14, so they got hot. Like right then.
They ultimately made their first month fine.
Like in that next week, they got to 15-14, and were set up to go. So I guess that's what I'm saying. Like I'm not banging the table. Houston's dead. Everyone kind of has fallen for that trap in one of the past couple years. Remember the COVID season, they were playing kind of an ugly.
They finished below 500.
Right. Everyone's been ready. Houston, trash cans, dusty. That COVID year, they looked bad. They've been rolling. They need to go soon because there's no other teams on the list that have done this. And then I think the part I kind of have ducked is that you can start off good and it can fade. It's a lot easier to be good and then be bad than to be bad and then be good. Is that obvious?
You can hang on to your hot start and go and just survive the rest of the way and then land in a pretty good spot. Rays did that a little bit last year. They had the all-time start and were like sneaky not impressive the rest of the year.
Last year, the only true outlier was on the National League side. Pittsburgh was 18-8.
Yeah, they had the awesome April.
But each year, there's one or two teams. Each year, there's like two teams that are good and then fade. Every year, there's maybe one team that was bad and then figured it out.
And then can even like push it.
Again, last year's AL, the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams at this point did not make the playoffs. I think the Mariners were the closest. They were one game back. Or however the AL West sorted out last year, 2 games back at the end. I don't know. 2 games earlier in the season. You could play that baseball dumb game if you want. 1, 2, 3 in the final, 6 in the NL. So I don't know. Like, if you're in those buckets, I know expanded playoffs and figure it out and all that, but also no. The last year, a couple other teams that are in the started good and faded bucket, like the Mets were 15-12. Remember New York Subway Series? How'd that work out for us? Cubbies also got to a decent start, 14-11, and they didn't make the playoffs last year. But, the Arizona Diamondbacks were 15-12. And what were we saying about them at the time? Like, hey, good start. I don't know.
It's a nice. I remember we had an episode.
Touch the Dodgers.
We had an episode like late May, early June. We were like, we had a talking baseball where like the title was like time to start respecting them because it was like, all right, 2 months that's real now. But
yeah. And let's see, in 2022, good teams that faded. It looks like the Giants got off to a hot start. And that wasn't a good Giants team, right? They finished 500. Now I've got my tabs all shuffled. I don't know. I guess I was surprised to see what I think is kind of an obvious statement. If you're bad to start, it's really tough to be good. If you're good to start, there's a chance you can still be bad. That's a lot easier to happen in baseball, whether it's injuries or playing over your skis a little bit.
Those do happen every year. Somebody plays well, but you can hang on to that and be in the mix,
right? I mean, that's going through some of these. Looking at last year again, Milwaukee got off to a really hot start, and I don't know, it's kind of Milwaukee that you never really knew with that team, but they're back at it. Atlanta, obviously. Tampa rode out their undefeated April. 22-5, by the way.
Crazy.
How about them Rays? Baltimore got off to an electric start last year. People didn't
use that.
People were hoping it was the year for Baltimore, but nobody knew.
People weren't like predicting it confidently.
Texas Rangers were 15-11. People didn't know about the Rangers. So like the start matters. I think player to player, it's really hard to do anything right now. You could still have an incredible season. You could have an awful season. Teams, like that's a lot of.
You need
that's
a go.
That's a lot of data at this point. Why is he always talking about data? Who is this guy? Hey, sound off in the comments why Houston is or is not the Cardinals. But there's kind of a lot of parallels.
Yeah. I remain blown away by like the offense. Player by player is really good. Abreu's having an awful time and Bregman's having a bad time, but like everyone else is performing at or above what your expectations would have been for them.
Right. And then I don't know, man. Like, it's
the pitching's just not
their
done
upcoming schedule. They've got a few off days, which sometimes that can help a bullpen or a team. But like 3 at the Cubs, I don't know. Cubs are playing pretty decent baseball right now. I can't tell you you're going to win that series in Chicago. They've got a 2-gamer at Coors, which, hey, even if you win those, like, your pitchers are probably going to be pretty bummed out by the end of it.
Don't know how good for morale that's going to be.
And then it's like a homestand versus Cleveland, who, again, Cleveland's off to an awesome start. So it has to start pretty soon. And when is that? When is that? Because the Astros have 6 games left in April. What's their record going to be? If they go 3-3, that's 10-19.
It's bad.
What if they lose? It's a hole that we really haven't seen a team in the past couple years dig themselves out of. So I know they are Houston, and they do deserve more leash than any other team. But like, I think it's getting closer than people are willing to talk about. And maybe it's us being scared of Houston fans because some of them are just mad at us. But baseball is baseball. I don't know. If it was like any other team, like at this point, we were worried about the Cardinals.
We were saying
like it took a turn. It was like, guys,
we were saying you gotta go
now, otherwise you're gonna be out of it, and they ended up out of it.
It's like that. The formula we figured out with our Yanks. It's like the 2 good months and survive all the rest. And any bad month you have, it's another good one you gotta have. It's hard to have 3 like awesome months in a year.
Sure
as
is.
A team.
Road trips, injuries, hot, cold, yes and no. Katy Perry. I saw Anne Juliet this weekend on Broadway. It was good. So that's our Broadway talk segment. We'll hit you with a little, again, sports apocalypse season. NBA playoffs are fun and got started. I think the talking points that really have leaked out of them, Clippers gave the Mavericks the business without Kawhi. Clippers had one of the best streaks of any team during this NBA season. That whoever wins this matchup is going to be such a sexy pick because they're going to take on the Thunder next. And again, it turns into that veteran NBA stuff we talked about for a little bit, that if Luke and Kyrie end up moving on and facing the Oklahoma City Thunder, or if the Clippers, Harden, Kawhi, PG, Harden with 28 points, huh? That one of those teams will become kind of the Western Conference. I don't want to say darling, because that's kind of not what they are. If OKC makes a run, they'll be a darling because they're young and cute. It's interesting. And the Nugs, I don't know. I think everyone wants LeBron and the Lakers to put up a fight. Split in Denver. Nuggets have won 9 in a row.
Something like that.
Yeah. So that's not exciting. I think the storyline in the East, Knicks hold serve. Embiid looked decent, then banged up his knee. The NBA people I was talking to, everyone's just looking at Embiid. If he picks up power and strength as they go, that's scary. I don't see it that way, and maybe it's my Knicks blinders, but I feel like especially the way Embiid plays, I feel like he's going to get banged up every game. Like, I don't think Embiid's going this way. I think Embiid's like, I was pointing up for those audio only. But I don't know. I'm playing injury god there.
Yeah, it's just kind of like an odd situation. Every year he's kind of in this spot.
Right.
Where it's like, well, if he survives this and is the healthy version of himself, there's a reason they were 35-8 or whatever the record is in games he played in the season, and there's a reason they were up 10 so quickly when he came out hot.
Yeah.
Like
scary moment.
It's like he's going.
Nick's nightmare start. Embiid just looks like a beast.
It's like, hey, try to close off every other valve and see what happens with him just eating. But
the Celtics end up bullying the Heat, and I think that's just going to happen. I don't think Heat culture will be strong enough. But the other East story, the Milwaukee Bucks just whoop the Pacers, which Pacers beating the Bucks kind of became assumed. Giannis out, everyone turning against Doc Rivers, and Dame just not having been real Dame this year. He goes nut job. I think 35 points all in the first half. They just blew the doors off the Pacers, and what's turned into an Eastern Conference, it's the Celts or bust. People were saying that the Sixers, if they fully click, they would be the toughest matchup for the Celts. I'll still lean Bucks. I still think NBA has a big chunk of Damian Lillard's not going to really give hit. This feels rude. He's 33 now. He's played a lot of NBA. Dame's saving some for the playoffs. And, that's just the facts. That's just the facts. So if they can get past this, Giannis can get healthy at some point during this series and come back. If you're Boston, I think that's the bad man. We'll see. I would say this. If you're a sports fan, turn on the TV. The hockey's just awesome and intense. And it just feels like a different brand of hockey. I don't know what it is.
Playoff hockey has been a thing.
I know it's such a thing, but it makes me a little mad. I don't get it. I mean, I do, but regular season hockey game, I'm just not really putting it on. But a playoff hockey game, it's almost like no nonsense. Yes, I'm going to watch. I just watched the Canucks last night. There was a gambling angle.
Yeah.
But
some flipping.
The late night Nashville Predators Vancouver Canucks game, that doesn't happen in the regular season. Enjoy the sports apocalypse. We got NFL draft coming up. Yeah. So we've got 2 playoffs. Baseball's rolling. NFL draft. It's a beautiful time of the year. We will see you guys Wednesday.
Wow.
NFL draft this week. See you guys.